What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode of House of the Dragon here on the Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies.
I love that the intro is now like a pinball. Send the pinball down, and certainly we're going to get into.
For everyone who watches the show that thinks it's cringe, my goal is to make it as cringe as possible. So
I think it's great.
How we doing, guys?
How you doing? Well, here we go. We're getting into episode 2 of season 2 of House of the Dragon on this particular episode of Geek Bites. This is called Rhaenyra the Cruel, and a lot went down here in the Greens camp, in the Blacks camp. A lot of battles, verbal battles here. Only one moment of real action, but everything else is a lot of this slow burn moving into place. These pieces, chess pieces on the board moving into place, and we see this Dance of the Dragons getting more and more messy as it goes along. This is like watching the Real Housewives of Westeros. There's a lot going on here in this drama. We might need Andy Cohen at the end for a reunion episode for this damn show. So we're going to talk about all of it here, but let's introduce ourselves first. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon of House McClung, first of his name, writer of Barry's, actor of Screen, sometimes.
Shannon the Magnanimous. Yes.
What would I say? Yeah, Shannon of House Dad Joke. Shannon of House Punell.
I like Punell. But what are the dragons on Punell? I would like to know the dragons on Punell. But yeah, a lot in this episode for us to discuss, gentlemen. Certainly, we get the fallout. Right, I mean, we're picking up right after the end of the last episode. The fallout of the death of King Aegon's son there, Jaehaerys, the beheading of the young child. We see a bloody towel. We see so much going on here. Aegon's anger, Alicent's maneuvering in this whole thing to try to cover up her banging Criston Cole while this was going down, being used. Otto setting up this PR situation to absolve them maybe and turn people back into fans of King Aegon there, but then Aegon messing it up by hanging all the rat catchers. Criston Cole being a bitch and sending Erryk on this suicide mission. And on the other side, we had Rhaenyra and Daemon have, to me, one of the best scenes we've ever seen on this show, maybe in the entire series of Game of Thrones as well, in terms of the dialogue and the back and forth emotional power here. But then eventually we also have Daemon taken off and then stuff going on there with Rhaenyra and Mysaria, and then eventually Erryk and Arryk going at it at the end, symbolizing what a civil war will eventually lead to in a microcosm for the macrocosm that is going on. Michael, your overall thoughts on this second episode here? This was a long one, 1 hour and 10 minutes, and a lot of talking and maneuvering and only one moment of action. Your feelings here?
If every episode of House of the Dragon was 2 hours, I'd be fine. I just give me more. I love it. I love every scene. I love all, this is, and when Shogun came out and everybody was comparing Shogun to Game of Thrones, and then people are like, well, is it right to compare those two things? But I think the comparison is that these are two shows where every single aspect of the show is firing on absolutely all cylinders. Like there is not a misstep in this episode to me. I think it was from just the choices in the directing, even from those opening shots, having all of the people within the keep being like pulled out of bed and ripped apart as Aegon is like destroying Viserys's Lego Westeros set. It was just like from top to bottom, it was amazing. And I also love the slow burn of the show. You know, it's like we're 2 episodes into this season and everyone's like, war is coming. And a part of you is like, all right, let's get to it. I want to see some fighting. But all of the pieces moving around on the board is what makes the world of Game of Thrones so much fun. And this episode was just pieces moving around in the most dramatic fashion. I loved it.
Shannon, your thoughts on this episode?
Really, really good. Really, really good. I think the thing with the slow burn, when it is done well, because some of this cast, we've only seen 6 episodes of them. When you think of Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook, they took over the second half of season 1. So something that they're doing really well with that slow burn is when you do finally get to that action, you almost don't want to see it. because you like everybody to a degree that is involved. And that's something that the show is doing really, really well. I mean,
Except Criston Cole.
Sequence. What's that?
Except for Criston Cole.
Oh,
there's that.
We don't
Sure.
like him.
that bitch.
No. We'll get to that.
We're going to get to Criston.
It's you can have a fantastic action sequence, but if you are not emotionally involved with the players, then it's just something cool to watch. When you are emotionally invested in who is actually doing the fighting, and this is something that Game of Thrones, the majority they did really, really well, is because you were so involved in their stories. I mean, I think we had an episode of a show recently that there was a lot of walking and talking, and it just didn't quite check off the box. Whereas this one, not so much walking, a lot of talking, and it was talking that we really were into. Yeah. Like you get to see the machinations of someone like Otto, who is mourning the death of his great grandson, even though he says I'm the grandfather. I'm like, unless they don't use the great, moniker in Westeros, you're getting your descendants confused. But that's just something that the show does really, really well, is this tragic thing happens and watching how the repercussions, the waves that are caused from this thing. And again, the cast, the writing, everything is just, for me at least, firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, this is how you do good TV. I mean, both of you did so well, eloquently sizing that up. This is how you do good TV. You know that a civil war is coming. You don't just dive in and have fights and random people popping up, and you don't meet Hugh on the battlefield, right? Right off, that's not your first meeting. You want to lay the groundwork for everybody, and you want to lay it very, very firmly. And Shannon, you're right. We only have less than 10 episodes with these actors, including the kids who have, gotten older, the actors that have come in to play the kids now as they're older. So we need more time to understand who they are. We need more time to see them going some trials and tribulations so that we have all that emotional investment with them when we get to the battles, when we get to those moments. I saw some people saying like the Erryk and Arryk thing didn't work for them because we didn't have to have enough time with them. We had enough time that we needed for that scene in my opinion, for that scene to carry the weight that it needed to carry. And we had enough time with Rhaenyra and Daemon and seeing Daemon pulling the shit he's been pulling since season 1, so that when we get that moment where he goes to almost choke her again, like he did at the end of season 1, the flinch carries weight. Because we've lived through this. We've seen this stuff. So there's so much here that I think was fantastic to watch. This is chess pieces moving on a board and moving in such a fantastic way that you're invested because the writing is excellent. The organic, emotional journeys everyone is going on. I mean, look at Aegon and Haelana passing each other on the stairs. She is ascending past this thing because there's a bigger picture at play. He is descending into his madness. There's just little things like this that you see going throughout that I thought was fantastic to see here. And there were some great scenes back. Otto scene with Aegon and Criston Cole standing there. I thought that was an incredible scene as well. So there was so much to enjoy and savor if you enjoy writing, directing, acting, and the cinematography and the direction here from Claire Kilner, who did 3 of the episodes last season and also directed The Wedding Date, in case you need a little balance there for Claire. So it's good stuff here for sure. But let's get into the greens. And the way there's so much here, so we're going to split up into 2 sections, all the green stuff and then all the black stuff. So let's start out with the greens. I'm just going to give it overall, and then Michael, pick and choose what you want to talk about. Aegon is dealing with the murder of Jaehaerys. As I said, he wants blood. Michael saying he destroyed that Lego thing of his dad's. Otto recommends and gets a funeral procession to use Haelana and Alicent's grief to turn the people against Rhaenyra. Blood is captured and murdered by Aegon with a mace after admitting that it was a rat catcher who was involved with this and that Daemon paid them. Alicent rejects Criston Cole initially. Then she tries to influence Haelana not to talk about her banging Criston on the side, which Haelana ignores and walks away from. And then later we see her submerging herself in water and essentially trying to purify herself from this situation. And then by the end, she's banging Criston again. Criston Cole, like the bitch she is, sends Erryk to attack Rhaenyra because he knows his knees would go weak and his balls would shrivel if he had to attack Rhaenyra himself, and does sleep with Alicent by the end. Aegon hangs all the rat catchers, undoing the PR move Otto just pulled, then fires Otto as the hand after Otto correctly calls him out on this and gives the hand to Criston Cole. Later, he is crying, or earlier in the episode, he was also crying about the death of his son, which is fascinating to me, and Alicent does not comfort him. And then Otto pines for the return of Viserys, and then is sent by Alicent to the House Tyrell to help essentially lobby them for their cause. And of course, Daemon ended up in a brothel and gets a little life lesson. But also, we also had Detective Aemon. So this was an interesting twist that I kind of liked in this as well. So, Mike, your thoughts on all the stuff that went on with the Black Seer, and what do you specifically want to touch on here, brother?
I mean, just sort of taking it character by character. Aegon is fascinating. I mean, like there's in a lesser show, and we said this last week as well. Like in a lesser show, he would just be Joffrey 2.0. Right. I mean, he's young, he's impetuous, he wants revenge, he's really upset, but there is just a little bit more of a tragedy to him as a character. Like Joffrey was just a little sociopath who was just given whatever he wanted by his mom. Like this is a different thing. Like between last week, Aegon sort of almost trying to be a good king and Otto being like, you can't do that. And then this week, he's, legitimately upset. I do think it's interesting that his upsetness about his son, he never says, they took my boy, I love my boy. It's like, he is my heir. He is my legacy. He is this, like, he's much more focused on I'm king. I'm the important guy. I'm the big boy in the big chair.
I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be seen
as weak. I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be seen as this. But I think that he's just sort of a tragic character. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the episode, when he's just sitting there alone weeping and Alicent comes in and you're like, bitch, you're the mom. Go over there and hold your son. And she doesn't do it. I'm like, this family is fucked up. But I think that, Otto is Ottoing. And I think like his whole idea of like, look, let's turn this around. Like we've got an opportunity. You're like, yes, this sucks. This is a horrible tragedy for our family, but let's think big picture. And he's smart. Like that is a good move. Like getting the commoners to rally around this idea that Rhaenyra is this cruel and evil person who doesn't deserve the crown. It's cool. And then, Alicent and Haelana going out there and Haelana not wanting to be around them. Like all of these little pieces of character work as the bigger picture of how are these two teams basically getting the people on their side or not, I thought was really, really interesting. Alicent to me is just a fascinating character. I mean, there's a part of you that does care for her and you see that like she's just been swept up in all of this and is trying to make the most of it that she can, but she can't let go of Criston Cole. But then as soon as she lets go of Criston Cole, she's like, I'm a sinner and I need to be punished for what I've done and everything that's happening to my family is on me. And you're like, girl, you need to get out of your own way. You need to get out of your own way. But, her obsession with Criston Cole and her inability to sort of reach out to her children the way a mother should, as she is trying to step into this role that her father has and be this schemer, particularly with Otto kind of going out of the picture. It's all going to be really interesting. I feel bad for Larys, who really did a lot of the legwork last week, really working hard. Working hard to get himself into that, hey, maybe, and like, Aegon clearly heard him. He's like, hey, Otto was your dad's hand. You need a hand who's on your side, but I'm just saying, don't mind me. I'm going to hobble off here creepily and go torture people in the dungeon. And Aegon was like, that's a good point. I'm going to make Criston Cole my hand. That made me laugh, but nothing made me laugh as hard as I did not have Otto Hightower as a comedic genius on my bingo card for House of the Dragon, but that man's reaction when Aegon said Criston Cole came up with a plan, the look on his face when Otto Hightower, I'm going to tell you that I laughed. I had to pause the TV. I was laughing so hard because it's like, I know that this is a very dramatic show, but when Otto Hightower said, oh, pray tell, what did you do? And when Criston Cole stepped forward and said, well, I was watching The Parent Trap last night and it gave me a really good idea. The eye roll of just like these fucking idiots that led into his speech. It was so funny to me because you're like, this man is doing 4D chess and Criston Cole was like, I'm sending the twin in because they look the same. And just his anger and his frustration, and also just in general, Otto Hightower is always sort of playing everything close to the vest.
Yeah.
And so seeing him in this scene just let loose. Like, I give no fucks. The guard is down. You are a fucking idiot. And especially when Aegon is like, my dad made me king. And Otto Hightower says, oh, is that what you think happened? Which basically says that even if Alicent believes that what Viserys says is what Viserys said, and Alicent thinks that she's in the right, Otto knows what's really up.
Yep.
Otto actually knows, and he lets it slip in that moment. So I thought that was all amazing. And yeah, Criston Cole is a douche. Criston Cole is an absolute douche. And the whole thing with Erryk, I'm not defending Criston Cole here. I don't think it was, I'm too chicken shit to go face Rhaenyra on my own. Like, the Erryk plan makes sense in a very Disney Channel kind of way. It's like, hey, you look like the guy that's in the building. You guys can switch places. But I do think what makes him super shitty is he's just taking this out on Erryk because that man,
his guilt.
Criston Cole feels so much guilt and is so tore up about what he has done to his role as a Kingsguard, like how he has no honor, how he's like, he was fucking when he should have been protecting, like, and he just takes it out on Erryk in like the worst way possible. Like, he is truly a piece of shit. Like, you thought Jaime Lannister was unredeemable, but he had his moment. Criston Cole, I don't think you can redeem this guy.
Yeah. The worst. Okay, Shannon, your thoughts on this? Feel free to go character by character, and I think we're going to dive into that scene with Aegon and Otto and Criston a little bit more here after you go. Go ahead, brother. What your thoughts?
So I'm going to go backwards just because, just to talk about Criston Cole. The lashing out that he does to Erryk, everything that he points out, he's pointing out something about himself. Like when he points out that his cloak is dirty, he's like, the white cloak, it symbolizes our purity, our chastity, whatever terminology you used. And he's kind of, and poor Erryk's been up all night, and he's just like, absolutely, I'll get it done. Nope, you'll get it done now. And you watch how Criston Cole is having to switch tactics because he's actually dealing with someone who does have a sense of honor, who does respect their oaths. All of the other Kingsguards, all the other people that were eating, if they had watches, that's when they would have checked them and walked away. Yeah. Because that moment that they all simultaneously like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna grab this bread. We're gonna give you guys the room here. I thought that was such a great moment,
Shannon, which was great. You could hear everyone.
Yeah, if they had a lute player, that's when it would have gone as everyone leaves. But the whole conversation was great, and even Erryk's just like, "This is a stupid plan. Like, I'm going by myself. Are you an idiot?" But then watching Criston then trying to be like, "Oh, but think of the glory. Think of the glory." And to be fair, I mean, yes, Criston's plan was kind of dumb. It was very close to succeeding. So
fair points,
he's a piece of shit. His plan was not without a little bit of merit because it did get close. Going to Alicent, again, I agree. Olivia Cook does such a fantastic job, and Alicent is such a fascinating character. And she knows, she's like, I'm in the wrong here. Like, I'm in the wrong. She's like, this is like God. The gods are punishing us. The gods are punishing me. I have done she feels a sense of guilt, which I think other people in her circle do not, but she never really acts on that guilt.
Right.
Like she feels guilty for a while. Then she's like, let me go find Criston Cole again. I'm going to push you a little bit. I might smack you in the face, but then I'm going to kiss that face. But I do think she is just they did
more than kiss, Shannon.
Yeah. What we saw.
He received his finger, shall we say. Go ahead. Yeah.
But agree, like her scenes with Haelana as well. I mean, she's incredibly sad about what has happened to her grandson. And Aegon, she's just kind of like, okay, yeah, that happened, but she's so sad about Haelana. Like her grandson's gone. She's like, there's nothing I can do about that. But my daughter is so jacked up right now, and the fact that this is not going to end for her. Now we have to be put on display. And granted, it's going to get us, it's going to load some arrows in our quiver at least for a little bit, until my dumb shit son does something stupid again. But the interaction that she has with Haelana, where Helena's like, I don't know them, I don't want to be close to them. She's like, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do. But yeah, Olivia doing a great job. Love Rhys Ifans. I think this is the role of his career.
Yes, agreed.
And he in real life, this is where you separate the artist from the art. In real life, he's an unusual guy. But you watch his work in this, and again, Otto is just such a fascinating character. And even though like they call him a pragmatist, which is like, okay, even though he's not like a great guy, we love to watch him. And going to Aegon, there is a beating heart in that rotten body of his. So there is a degree of sympathy, but the moment you feel bad for him, he goes and does something just trademarkably stupid, like you did the thing again. And we didn't really talk about Aemond and watching this relationship that he has with this prostitute, where you see that he's in the fetal position. Like, this is the one place that he will let himself go and be vulnerable. And again, just so fascinating for an episode that again does not have a ton of action. For me at least, it was incredibly captivating.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, and one thing I wanted to point out, because it's something that I really know. It was in the first episode a little bit, and I know we're going to get into the Hugh scene, and we're going to talk about some of these other characters down the line. But Helena's whole "I don't know them." We have to go in front of the people. I don't know them. And even Otto's plan of like, we need to get the people on our side. And then, when Aegon hangs all the rat catchers, what we see is the grief of the people. And Otto's like, the people are no longer on our side. They're weeping at our doorstep. And then even Aemond in the scene with the prostitute, she makes a very pointed thing when he was like, oh, I lost my temper. I wish I hadn't done that. And she says, when princes lose their tempers, it's people like me who suffer. And I just think that if we're really tracking this, this show is making a very big deal out of all of this familial bullshit that's happening and everybody fighting and should we do this or should we do this? And I killed him and I did this and we're sending the twin. It's the people who are suffering. And we're seeing a lot of the people we're seeing in general, the reaction of the people a lot, but also in characters like Hugh and even Mysaria and everyone else, we're really getting a lot more of like the commoner's perspective on this, which I think is really, really interesting. And I think is going to be something that is going to continue throughout this season.
But this is what happens when you let Michael Vogel go ahead of you. He takes all your points. Yes, absolutely. This is what I was going to stress as well, because I don't think Game of Thrones really dealt with the common folk at all, really. You could follow and argue Daenerys did that, but it really wasn't in the kingdom, connected with the common folk and having conversations with them. So the fact that they were such a big deal in this episode and a little bit in last episode as well, this has been an essential part of this approach to Game of Thrones through House of the Dragon, which I've really enjoyed as well. And look, you can pull it all the way out. The Ravens are essentially tweets, and you're trying to, control the social media narrative, having the guy walk ahead of the funeral procession saying, Rhaenyra the Cruel, Rhaenyra this, Rhaenyra that. That's essentially Hannah Waddingham going shame, shame, shame in front of behind Cersei. So it's the same kind of thing that you see here. They're trying to control the narrative, and this idiot hangs all the rat catchers, and now they've lost the narrative because that's going to get out. Everybody's going to find out about that. And now all this work that they did is going to be overturned. And now people are like, wait, I believed the ex-husband. Oh, the ex-wife. Oh, wait, but the ex-husband put another tweet out, and then the ex-wife put another. So that's basically what you're lost in now, is this social media war between these two. Because she's like, I'm going to send out ravens to counter their ravens. That's essentially what's going on, because the will of the people is very important in this particular thing. And you're right, Mike, to bring up, she's the head of the brothel, that woman there. What she says to him is essentially what we see play out with Erryk and Arryk. Those two dying and fighting at the end, two brave, noble, principled men dying because two dysfunctional houses can't figure shit out. They're the price that is paid for prince's angers, or for the king's anger, for these people of privilege. And you bring up Alicent, Shannon. I think it's an excellent point. Alicent is privilege personified. I raised a bunch of shitty ass kids. I don't want to take responsibility for it. I will half-ass feel guilty about it, but I'm still gonna bang my boy, Criston Cole. I'm still gonna, and I'm probably gonna use him now that he's a hand of the king to solidify my power. And I'm okay participating in this ruse with my daughter, who I supposedly care about her grief, riding in this procession behind the beheaded body of her child that's been sewn together with Frankenstein stitches. Like, these are these things that you see, that these are people of complete vapid emotional makeup, and yet all these people are suffering because both these sides can't figure their shit out and try to rule for the better of the people and not the better of themselves, and Aegon is really, and I'm glad you started with that one, Michael. I'm so confounded by Aegon, because this is a guy who had bastard children just so they could fight in pits last season. This is the guy that raped a maid, if you don't forget that situation there, and got her impregnated and got and slapped around by Alicent for that situation. Now here he is, and he's got all this emotion for his son. He's got all these emotions going on, and you're so confused because he really cared about the people in the last episode. So it's a fascinating version. It is not Joffrey 2.0. It's a much more complex young king that I think is a fascinating
he cared about being loved. He didn't care about the individual. He cared about how it
cares about being loved is a shocking. Joffrey didn't give a fuck about being loved, and that's what I mean. It's an interesting thing. We just reviewed The Boys, where they put that situation inside of Homelander so that he could have some kind of kryptonite in his mind. So the idea of feeling loved can be debilitating if used in a certain way, So I that.
I do think it's interesting because, like, last week's episode, that scene didn't play as, Aegon wanted them to love him. He wants the attention. He wants the acclaim. Like, when that dude was like, y'all took my goats, he was like, well, then we should give you your goats back. Like, he actually, like, that is a very simplistic, like, you're cool, I can solve that problem for you, no big deal. It was Otto who was like, we need the goats to feed the dragons, dummy. So it's like, it wasn't a please love me. Like, there is a part of him.
That's what I'm saying.
I think the thing about Aegon is, it's not I want everybody to love me.
Right.
What Aegon's driving force is I really want to be a good king. He has no idea how to do that. And he lets his emotions get the better. Like, he thinks being a good king is being feared, or being a good king is don't show weakness. Like, when you really want to get into the bigger picture of this show that has two women as the central figures on either side, and when you look at, like, particularly Rhaenyra and Rhaenys and Mysaria, and then you look at the way Otto or Aegon or Daemon acts, this show makes a very specific statement about the stereotypically masculine ways of exhibiting power and strength versus the female way of exhibiting power and strength. And Aegon deep down wants to be a beloved, feared, amazing, powerful king, and the pressure of that and the fact that he's just not that and not smart enough is what breaks him.
Yeah,
he was never supposed to be the king.
Right.
Exactly.
He was never prepared.
Which is why he breaks and hangs the rat catchers rather than doing and being patient and doing his own investigation. He just goes, fuck it, I'm going to hang them all. Screw it. And he does hang cheese. So he did kill the guy, but he also killed all these other innocent people who were not involved in the plot simply for being rat catchers. And I'm going to walk into a minefield and I say this, but this is when you don't have, how can I say this correct? When you don't have, in this particular situation, when you don't have a strong guiding father figure to help you figure this out, to help you process this stuff, this is what can happen, right? Viserys, unfortunately, not being there in a physical, strong sense to help his son and guide his son through this position, so he can teach him how to be king. He succumbs to all this stuff. Alicent, stuck in a patriarchal society, is not able to cross certain lines with her sons to force them to kind of have that situation going on in their lives. So they can't. It doesn't mean that every situation you need to. I'm not saying that in this particular situation, because that's why we get Otto saying, God, I wish Viserys was here, pining for Viserys, even though he was the architect of essentially screwing Viserys over. He's the one that is pining for Viserys, and he talks about Viserys' warmth and kindness and vulnerability. And even later, and we're going to get to this, when Rhaenyra and Daemon are battling, it is Daemon who said, "Oh, my brother was weak because he didn't want to spill blood." But essentially Viserys was fighting for a breaking of the toxic masculine approach to being the king, a more intelligent, heartfelt, caring approach to being the king. And that guidance to Aegon would have been essential to him becoming a better king than what he is now.
Pushing back on what you said slightly,
Sure.
I think it's fair to say that having good parental guidance, whether it be male or female, is required. And the issue that Aegon has is with Viserys being gone, and his the people that are basically raising him are Otto and Alicent. And both of them, for their own reasons, are way more interested in the bigger picture of the kingdom than they are on raising a good son. And even at the moment, because to your point, it's not that the patriarchy has trapped Alicent and she can't cross those lines to help her son. There is no patriarchy in that scene when she walks into the room and sees her son crying. There is nothing preventing her from going and comforting her son and being a mother and saying, I know that this is hard, but I'm here for you. And that's all that, I mean, that's not all he needs, but that's something he needs. And the fact that she can't even give him that, I mean, this dude has no guidance except people telling him how he should rule, but nobody's telling him how he should be a good leader.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I don't agree.
I don't know. I think I'm with John. I'm with Johnny here because
I think he needs a good father is not necessarily
no.
It's
in this particular situation with Viserys, he would have benefited from a father like that in this situation.
In this society, which is a patriarchal society,
and it is
if Viserys had been more present, because because of the confines of that society, he only listens to Alicent so much.
Right.
So having that dad figure, again, because it's a patriarchal society, that is the thing that was lacking. And because Alicent was not able to imprint enough on her son, the kind of little bit of a monster that he's become, she's kind of like, I got nothing for you.
Yeah.
I think two things really quickly, and then we could move on to the next thing. One, I think we're forgetting, we're looking at Viserys with a little bit of rose-colored glasses because old man was around with Aemond and Aegon when they were kids, and he did jack shit. So he I mean, he did. Like, you were like, oh, if only he had been there to be that guiding hand. He was there for
not through the portion of
but he wasn't the guiding hand, though.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was like barely alive with half his face.
Then that's the point. Is it's not that. Then Viserys wouldn't have been the solution because he wasn't the solution then. I don't think he'd be the solution now if he was around. And additionally, I get what you're saying about this as a patriarchal society, but the very fact that you have the scene in this episode where Alicent walks in, looks at her son crying, and just turns and walks back out of the room is pretty much a statement on this kid doesn't have a father, sure, but he also doesn't really have a mother.
But he also wouldn't listen because it's a patriarchal society. He's been essentially taught since birth to discount the opinion of women and his own mother. And that's what I mean. She wouldn't have been able to guide him in any way because he's never listened to her. Because if you go back and watch season 1, she has tried to get him to do the right thing, but he never listens. And that's where the imbalance is. But the only thing with Viserys is I think if Viserys had stayed a strong, virile man, he could have guided. And he no way would have been the king.
He wasn't a strong, virile man when he was young.
Yeah, it's true. It's fair point.
Like, if he had stayed a strong, virile man, who are you talking about?
That's a good point, yeah.
Stronger and more virile.
Stronger and more virile.
And more virile than what he was.
If his whole face wasn't falling off. With the one last thing, I know we got to move on to the black sheep, but one last thing. What did you guys think of this scene with the hand, with Otto being removed as the hand? We've touched on it, but I want to kind of get the full opinions here. What do you think this is going to lead to? Why does he choose Criston Cole and not Larys, who's been lobbying him? I know he says he wants a steel fist, but I mean, Criston is not. I mean, what are these kids going to do when they find out Criston Cole's been banging their mom behind their back? That's what I want to know. Aemon last episode is like taking him into his confidence about what he's going to do there to attack Rhaenyra. And now you have Aegon going, no, I want this dude who I have no idea is banging my mom to be like my second in command here. This is a dangerous situation. And I do want to say one last thing. The words from Otto, I mean, deprivations, feckless impetuousness, trifling forbearance, judiciousness, and insolent. Those are fantastic words to use when messing with Aegon. So Real quick, what do you guys think is going to happen out of this situation with him becoming the Hand?
Nothing good.
Fair point, Michael.
Sorry, Aegon is the type of person that to get his attention, you have to shout. And Larys doesn't shout. Larys whispers. Criston Cole shouts.
Right,
and that's why Aegon picked him.
Yeah, look, I mean, Larys would just do in his own way what Otto does. Like, he does understand the bigger picture and understand that like sometimes patience and kind of like working behind the scenes to make stuff happen is better. Criston Cole is like, hey, go fight, go kill her. And so like Aegon just wants action. That's all he wants. He doesn't want to think about things. He wants to deal with what's in front of him. Again, going back to the goat thing, it's like there's a person in front of him that's like, I need goats. He's like, I'll give you goats. Doesn't think about the bigger picture of why they need the goats in the first place. Criston Cole's like, hey, somebody killed your son. I sent them to kill her. Great, love you, you're it. But like, that's not what a Hand should do. So I mean, like, we all know this is going to be a bad choice. Otto knows it's going to be a bad choice, and ultimately it's just one more notch in the Aegon really wants to be a good king but has no fucking idea what he's doing belt.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see Criston Cole picking up his robe or his cape and running like a coward through the streets there.
I can't wait to see Criston Cole at one of those meetings of the board. What are they called? The
small council.
The high council. The high council.
Yeah.
He's gonna be in that high council room, and everyone's gonna be like, "So what do we do?" He's gonna be like,
"Sword."
So have you seen the Parent Trap? Like, he's got nothing.
How many twins do we have in the kingdom?
I got a really good idea. So in the Parent Trap.
And everyone just rolls their eyes. Oh, fuck, not again.
Lord Hand, we have a set of triplets. Oh, you better.
Send one to the wall. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the blacks right after this. Good stuff. All right. Let's get into the black side of things. Shannon, I go to you first on this. Rhaenyra wants to launch her own, launch her own tweet. Sorry, Ravens to counter Otto's funeral procession. As I said, confronts Daemon about what he did here with the situation with the death of Jaehaerys, and which Rhaenys rather knew when they were having that council meeting with that look she gave Daemon. She knew immediately what that son of a bitch did. Great scene between Rhaenyra and Daemon here, I think, is incredible. Here watching Emma Darcy and Matt Smith going at it. Daemon just goes, fuck this, and takes off on Caraxes to roam the skies and pull some other crazy shit. Balin is sent to watch King's Landing and report back, and her and Jacaerys have a really sweet exchange. Is it possibly flirty? Not sure, but a commentary about how even Balin prefers her stepmom over Daemon. Alan's brother Addam is introduced here, and there was talk about a great goat stew, and their back and forth is really interesting because I also think this is a bit of a microcosm. Young people who've never been to war are always so excited about war. Older people who've been to war tell them, don't get so excited. It's not what you think it is. So I thought that was a nice exchange between the two of them. And then we see Hugh, as you guys mentioned, Hugh's financial issues at home. Yes, he was promised the coin. He hasn't seen the coin, and he's got a sick daughter and a wife who'd be like, if I had that extra money, who knows what I'd do. Corlys and Rhaenys have a fun scene together. Best relationship in the show, in my opinion. Rhaenyra gives Mysaria some grace here after initially refusing to let her go. And this act saves Rhaenyra's life almost immediately as she spots Arryk coming off the boat here and alerts Erryk to the situation. The two brothers fight, as we said, with Erryk killing Arryk and then Erryk falling on his sword in front of Rhaenyra, which I thought was devastating. So, Shannon, your thoughts on the blacks and stuff that went on here in this particular episode?
I mean, starting with Rhaenyra, poor Rhaenyra. Like, she has barely had time to grieve her son, and then suddenly she's being accused of I don't know if it would be infanticide, but toddlercide, I guess. And this kid who is her nephew. Like, you're saying that in my grief, the one was it the one guy that Rhaenys just like, quiet you.
Yeah.
The one guy says like, you were sad. Sometimes we make bad decisions when we're sad. But yeah, that moment that Rhaenys catches Daemon's eye, and that moment, I can't remember which character it is from Looney Tunes, but it's like, oh, I'm a bad boy. I mean, that was full on Daemon's reaction to people.
That's the Abbott and Costello dogs. Yeah, great reference. Dude.
But that was Daemon's look, and then the moment that Rhaenyra catches Daemon's eye and realizes, oh, son of a bitch, are you kidding? And we talked about last week how I guess in the books that Daemon was maybe a little more clear about if they didn't find Aemond, whereas in this, the ambiguity of that first scene really served what happened in this scene, where she's like, what did you say? He's like, I didn't say to kill a kid. She's like, but what did you say? Like that dynamic back and forth. Emma D'Arcy and Matt Smith, they are so good together. Yeah. And Rhaenyra bringing up the fact that like you're still thinking about the throne that you lost. She's like, and you didn't lose it, you gave it away. Like that scene, it was just crackling. It was just electrifying, those two together. Going to the end with the Erryk and Arryk, I do agree with the criticism that if there is one relationship that would have been served juicing not just the last episode, but over time. Yeah. I think if we'd spent a little bit more time with them, because I thought the scene as it was really, really good. Yeah. But I think if we had spent a little more time with them, we would have focused less on the symbolism of this civil war happening and more on the points of view of these twins, these two guys, literally being driven to the point where they are having to fight one another because the people that they serve can't get their shit together. So I do agree with that criticism. That being said, I thought the scene that we still got was fantastic. And Rhaenyra and the White Worm, what is her name?
Oh, Mysaria. Yeah.
Mysaria. The two of them together. I mean, again, you can see Rhaenyra. Is Rhaenyra perfect? Of course not. Right. But Rhaenyra is the person that should be on the throne, because just listening, like, all right, if my husband made this deal with you, I'm going to honor it. Like, you see that Rhaenyra is going to be a good ruler. And for those of us who haven't read the books, if she gets the chance.
Good call. If she gets the chance. Michael, your thoughts on what happened here with the black side of things of this Dance of the Dragons?
Yeah, I mean, like we said last week, it's clear whose side the showrunners were on, to Shannon's point. Like, Rhaenyra is just good. If Daemon wasn't around, if it was just her and Team Dragonstone, like, they'd be killing it. I think they'd be doing great. Like, they're good. But yes, all of the eyes in that scene and Matt Smith just Daemoning around that glowing table, like, it was great. And then yes, I think that the Rhaenyra Daemon scene is probably the highlight of the episode. I mean, Emma D'Arcy, man, they hold their stuff in reserve, but when they really go for it, they go for it. I mean, like, that was some tour de force acting on their part. Like, it was just great. And like Shannon said, Emma D'Arcy and Matt Smith, the two of them together, it's just really, really, really good stuff. And I think just, you really, again, like I was saying before about Aegon thinking that the way to be a king is to be powerful and to, like, have that violent retribution. Like, Daemon is interesting to me because his entire belief system is, my brother looked me over because he was threatened by how powerful I am. He was threatened that I would overshadow him. And then he, like, turns it on Rhaenyra and says, and you're threatened that I'll overshadow you. And she's like, nobody can fucking trust you. Like, what the fuck is your problem? And I don't think he hears it. Like what's interesting about him is he is so sure that he would be the best king. And again, just like Aegon, believes that being the best king is a swift hand of vengeance. I have the biggest dragon. I'm going to beat you up. Having nothing to do with, like, leading the people or taking care of the people. Like, it's all about power for him. And when he's faced with the fact that, Viserys as a king, as we were saying, not the most virile man and not a king. I mean, his whole thing in season 1 was like, he's not a king that's going down in the history books. Nobody's gonna really remember Viserys' rule because nothing really happened. But the reason nothing really happened is because nobody was fighting. Everything was just fine.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything amazing. He's not going down in the books. And Daemon wants to go down in the history books. He wants to be the leader of a revolutionary war. And that's great for the history books, not great for the people that are living it. And so, yeah, so just Rhaenyra just laying into him on, my dad couldn't trust you. I can't trust you. Like, nobody can trust you. It was the crux of a lot of what's going on. And that combined with that scene that of Rhaenys and Corlys in bed, where they're like, Rhaenys is like, that motherfucker, he's got it. And then when Corlys was like, well, he is the king consort, and she's like, but he's not the king. And them sort of being like, well, let's take him at his word and see what happens. But Rhaenys makes the important point that Daemon was kind of in check.
Yeah.
But now that all bets are off and there's going to be a massive civil war for who gets to take the crown, the idea that there's a part of him that's like, well, if everyone's fighting over the crown anyway, if both of these people are gone, I guess I get it. Like, I mean, you can't deny that that's a piece of that pie. I really thought the Baela Jacaerys scene was really, really sweet. I think flirtatious is a good word, since aren't they betrothed to each other?
Yeah, I don't know what the situation is there. With
I'm pretty sure they're supposed to. I mean, they're sort of siblings who are also getting married, which in the Targaryen bloodline, I think is, a Tuesday. But I thought it was a really nice scene to talk about parentage. Like, I think Baela kind of basically being like, I kind of hate my dad. Like, he's a dick. Yeah. And then Jacaerys talking about his dad's his gay dad, gay dad, and then his real. But I think like the thing about the scene that was really good is when they brought up his real dad. And like, she sort of very casually brings it up. Like, we're talking about fathers, and she casually brings him up. Like, so much of season 1 was Aemond making fun of them and calling them strong as an insult. And so anytime their actual parentage came up, it was always like as an insult, or you don't really deserve this, or you're not a real Targaryen. But this scene was the opposite. She sort of really casually brought it up, and he responded. And it sort of was the, yes, I know where I come from. Like, I know what I'm about, which I thought was nice. And then again, the Mysaria Rhaenyra scene. Look, these are two women who were both scorned by Daemon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Rhaenyra asks her where she got that scar, I mean, they both got their scars from Daemon, unless I'm misremembering.
No, you're right.
And I think Mysaria is interesting because she's a tricky one. Like, she shows up, she's like, hey, I used to do a lot of tricky stuff, but I don't do it anymore because I realized tricky stuff doesn't get me anymore. But also, hey, I'm a strong woman who was taken down by men, and the men didn't understand and tried to control my life. I feel like you might understand that. That's not me being tricky. I'm just saying some things. And you're like, okay. But she earned her keep. Like, to Shannon's point, Rhaenyra does prove that she is a good leader and honors Daemon's deal, even though Daemon is off doing God knows what, hopefully gathering people at Harrenhal. And Mysaria does right at the end as well. So I thought it was good. I don't disagree on the Erryk thing, but I also think to a degree, it's like with everything else going on, it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
Could they have done more building these two characters up so I really, really cared that they killed each other? You could. But at the end of the day, they were two good guys. They both did what they thought was right. And then, as John said, the shitty royal families brought them together, and it was tragic for all. So I thought it was cool. It was fun to watch the whole, I'm sneaking into the castle and literally doing the Parent Trap, but with swords, and it worked really, really, really nicely. So I thought it was good. But yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, and really quickly, the Hugh and the Alan and Addam stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was saying before, I just think this is all building up to be like, even the scene with Addam, who is ridiculously hot, picking the oysters on the beach and then pulling that crab out. It's like he pulls the crab out and then the dragon flies overhead, and you're like, oh wow, this crab was minding his own business and you just swooped in and picked him up, and here's this giant dragon overhead and you're minding your own business, and you are about as safe as that crab was. So I think all of this is just building up to be like, to see that common perspective, the common man perspective, the commoner's perspective on these big epic, who gets to rule, who gets to sit on this crown. I really get intrigued by all that. And it seems clear we're getting more of that, but I'm excited to see more of that.
Yeah, I think you're great to bring up the dad stuff. You know, as I said, you need two strong dads. No, I'm joking. I thought that was a really sweet moment. I thought that was really sweet to hear. And the fact that she like just deftly slid in Harwin Strong, I thought was incredible. And my man rolled with it. And I thought that was and I think there's the difference, right? Rhaenyra's kids are actually good people. They've been raised by a strong woman who does not suffer fools, right? Alicent, sadly, a bit more manipulated since the beginning. Not necessarily as strong, maybe as of character as Rhaenyra is, and that could be for a number of reasons. Because she has Otto Hightower, a scheming, manipulative person who put her in a bed with an old man to have kids so that he could solidify his power in the kingdom. Whereas Rhaenyra was raised by Viserys, and there's a real kind of strength to her and all that. Huh? So, yeah.
Sweetness and strength.
Sweetness, yeah. And that's an essential part of who she is, which is why coming out of this episode, like what she does with Mysaria, I mean, that stare that Emma Darcy holds on Mysaria was great. I love that they just kept that stare for a few seconds where you as a viewer were like, what the fuck is going on here? So just staring at her. I thought that was fantastic. But her and Daemon, that is an incredibly well-written scene. Like I was on the edge of my seat because they were bringing out all the laundry, man. All the dirty laundry was coming out and all this. I mean, you're right, Mike. The reason he won't see it, and I think Shannon said this as well, he won't see it because it destroys what he believes is the truth about himself. I have watched 27 seasons of Amazing Race now over the last year, and I can't count how many times these deluded teams believe other teams are thinking about them all the time because they're intimidated by them, and no one is intimidated by them. So it's that kind of stuff that you're just like, you have to create fantastical narratives in your head to validate the reasons why you're doing the things you're doing. And when you're a sociopath, psychopath like Daemon, those are the things. But I mean, Rhaenyra doesn't necessarily have the strongest ground to stand on. She was quite fine with Daemon's previous wife getting burned by a dragon so she could have him. So in a way, she is complicit to some of Daemon's stuff, even in their back and forths. But that moment where he reaches for her, as I said earlier, to almost choke her, man, that was really powerful. And it built to that moment because this is an abusive, toxic relationship. This is a horribly codependent, abusive, toxic relationship. And it is the one weakness that Rhaenyra has in her life. And I wonder how this is going to play out because she says he might be gone for a week. He may be gone for forever. I don't really know. He's got to walk his own path.
And then Mysaria like, girl, don't I know it?
He does that, don't he? Yeah, but when you bring up the Corlys stuff, I think that's huge because Rhaenys understands Daemon because she was passed over, which I think she kind of
what she says,
to.
which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting twist, but she only understands him to a point. The fact that he's this X factor, and even Rhaenyra has to say, which we saw in the trailers and saw now in this episode, do you essentially bend the knee to me or not? And we know that he doesn't. We know, as you said, Michael,
and he does. Yeah, when he doesn't answer.
When he doesn't answer, the fact that those two might take each other out, he will absolutely slide into that power void if he can. And I saw so many people when I speculated about this on my trailer reaction say like, oh, he would never turn on a Targaryen. I was like, bitch, Daemon would turn on anybody. Daemon would turn on his own right hand if his left hand was going to make him powerful. I'll tell you this right now. That's the way Daemon works. So there's no bloodline bullshit with Daemon. It's about power. So yeah, I love what's going on here. And my God, Emma Darcy, there's just such a regalness to her. When I was doing my reaction, I felt like, my God, it's like she's grown from season 1 into season 2, even as a human being and as an actress. There's just such a energy and strength and power to her in this role that is just illuminating when you watch her work in the quiet moments, you know?
Yeah, I think. Look, I mean, they've said that this is like the most fun that they've had. That they've had performing. I mean, I think when you see Emma Darcy in interviews, I mean, they're so humble about their work. Like they're like, oh, you know, I think I'm okay. Like I don't know, and you're like, you are fucking killing it. But I do think what's really interesting to your point about Rhaenyra and Daemon is that, you know, Alicent has a lot of flaws, but her big flaw is Criston Cole.
100%.
And Rhaenyra's big flaw is Daemon. So with everything else going on, you have these two women that are central to the story, and Alicent can't get out of her own way without fucking Criston every 5 seconds. And Rhaenyra, to your point, is in this toxic relationship. And she even says, like, trying to win you over, trying to win your approval, win your trust. Like, when I was a little girl, that was fun. That was a fun challenge. Right. I got too many challenges now. I can't with this shit. It's too much. And so I think that's, these two women, like, that's their big, I would argue that Alicent has more flaws than Rhaenyra, but they both are sort of swept up with these two men on either side. And like, look, I'll give Rhaenyra props. Daemon's the more dangerous one. Yes. But I get it. And I get Criston Cole too. He's hot. Never mind. I get both.
Well, and when you look so, go ahead, Johnny.
No, Shannon. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Well, I think when you look at the Achilles heels that both Alicent and Rhaenyra have, and then you look at Rhaenys, and it's like, this is the person who should have been on the throne. I mean, like that scene with, like, again, that relationship that she has with Corlys. Corlys talks about the fact that he made peace with the fact that he's going to be the number 2 in this relationship. It's like, I married a Targaryen. I knew what I was getting into. Because Daemon is also a Targaryen, it's the two alphas being in a relationship together, despite the fact that amongst Corlys's people, Corlys is 100% the alpha, but he acknowledges who his partner is. And that great line that he had where they were talking about how, Daemon took off, and he's like, that's too bad, because it was kind of fun to watch Rhaenyra boss him around. Like, again, that's why Corlys is such a great character.
Well, and that's a great thing you bring up, Shannon, because we dive into that exchange, and it's a small part of the episode, but there's something really powerful that alludes to what we were talking about earlier. Corlys is very clearly a man who is not afraid of powerful women, is not out here trying to spill blood in order to show who he is so people don't think he's weak. He's a very self-composed, confident man who has a powerful woman by his side, and there is no loss for him to play number 2 to her because he knows who he is. And there's a strength in that. And that's the difference between good masculinity and toxic masculinity. He's not trying to prove anything. It doesn't mean he can't make mistakes. It doesn't mean, like he did last season, going a little too far out and almost dying. But the way this relationship works, it's so healthy. It's the only healthy relationship in the entire fucking show. And you can tell they're a little back and forth. There's genuine love and affection between them in their exchanges. And I think that's such a good message that the show is showing really subtly underneath everything here. Yeah,
I think that's actually a really, really good point, is that when you look at Corlys compared to Daemon, one of them really struggling as being a king consort, and the other one kind of being like, yeah, okay, cool, I get it. And Corlys comes off much stronger than Daemon does. I mean, Daemon just is like, slinking around the castle, scheming and pouting and, being angry. And Corlys is like, I got it all, man. My wife's awesome. Like, it works. He's got it going on.
So quickly, as we wrap up here, Addam of Hull is just some quick Easter eggs for you all. Addam of Hull is introduced here. He will be a big part of the show going forward in terms of those Alan and Addam, essentially replacing probably Erryk and Erryk as the two brothers here on this show. They will be important as this thing goes along, and he's played by Clinton Liberty. And I think, Mike, you make an excellent point of him fighting the crab underneath as we see this dragon riding below. It's really interesting. Hugh, we saw already. Keep tabs on Hugh. There is more to come on Hugh. In the book, Cheese is never found, but in the show, he is killed here, as we saw.
Cheese stands alone.
Cheese stands alone. And Erryk and Arryk actually had their fight before Rhaenyra's bedchamber in the book, but I think it was smart to change that, to have it in her bedchamber, because in a way, it gives Criston Cole even more validity for his stupid idea. And so that will be interesting how that messes with the power dynamic. Oh, one last thing, Michael. One last thing. Darren Targaryen is referenced. This is important. Yes. We have not seen Darren Targaryen. So the fact that Alicent is sending Otto to essentially align with Darren, that's going to be interesting going down the road. So keep tabs on that. So go ahead.
For the uninitiated, who is Darren Targaryen again?
Darren is Alicent's youngest son. Okay. And so Otto, who I think we didn't even see in season 2, but was sent off as a baby someplace else to be raised.
Yeah, we never really saw him. But also, Otto's not going there now. He's going to
right.
Highgarden.
Yeah,
Highgarden. No, I was just gonna say the other thing about the Rhaenyra Erryk scene is like moving it into her bedchamber with Rhaenyra actually threatened, just raised the stakes visually in general as well. Like it was a more
Agreed.
dynamic scene in that you had the Erryk or Erryk, the one from King's Landing, trying to like get to
Arryk.
her. Arryk. You had Arryk trying to get to her as Erryk was trying to defend her. Just kind of like the way that whole scene played out. It was really, really. I mean, for the one action sequence that we got, it was a really good, fun one.
Yeah.
Now, who killed who? Erryk killed Arryk?
Erryk killed Arryk, yes.
So
and then
Erryk successfully defended his queen,
He did.
and then he took his own life because he couldn't bear with the fact that he had to kill his brother.
That he killed his own brother, which was great. The back and forth. And apparently in the book, the fight lasts for an hour, which I don't know how that happens with all that stuff. And that they both die from their wounds. So no one kills the other one. They both just kind of die from their wounds from having fought each other. So
I also
think this is much more narratively better for the show.
The last thing I wanted to say, because we didn't get to it, is I feel for Alicent. Otto Hightower being the comic gold of this episode. When Alicent was like looking at him and she was like, "I've sinned," and he goes, "I do not care to hear it." Poor Al is like, Dad, I want to talk to you. I really feel bad. He's like, "Hey, don't give me your bullshit. I'm dealing with my own stuff right now. I'm out. Hightower out."
I think it was more like, I don't want any information that they're going to cut my head off of about. So don't fucking tell me, because then I have to deal with it. I thought that was
and just thinking of twin versus twin combat, as soon as you said that fight in the book lasted an hour, it made me think of the second season of Arrested Development, where George Sr. is fighting Oscar. And because they're twins, neither one of them can get a hit in.
Great stuff. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review of everything that happened in House of the Dragon here, episode 2 of season 2. Rhaenyra the Cruel here. So we hope you enjoyed our conversation, our back and forth. So Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, I'd like to follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's at geek_buddies. On Instagram, at the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media and support the best character in House of the Dragon, the dog, that even though Cheese kicked him, the dog was still waiting by Cheese, that son of a bitch, after he'd been hung. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter, at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram, at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel for more Parent Trap stories, it's at MK2. And if you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
I mean, that dog and cheese is another dysfunctional relationship in Westeros. Michael, please.
Go ahead and smash that like button below. Thank you very much. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Check out all the amazing content he's got there. Leave your comments below. What did you think of this episode? What do you think is going on? Do you want to taste Addam's stew? Which is your favorite version of the Parent Trap? Let us know below what you thought. If you're listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some stars and some comments so we go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, the dad thing was specific to that situation. Don't get mad in the comments. I'm happy about single parent households. I'm having double parent households, 2 same-sex parent households. I had no issues with that. Just want to clarify.
But yes, in this specific example, the virile and powerful Viserys being around would have really changed things, specifically to this example.
As Johnny tries to put the fire out, Vogel throws some gas on it.
He loves it. All right, let's get on out of here. Thank you all so much. Please, just a plug, if you want to look for my reaction, I recorded it to watching it for the first time. That is going to be up on the channel as well, so look for that coming up in the future. But thank you all so much for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you next week with another brand new spoiler review episode here for House of the Dragon Season 2 from the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey!